So I want to start, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
You are the first. You might be the last, depending on how this interview goes.
Thank you for having me. I feel very honoured to be your first guest.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Because I think I've known how much this means to you and how long it's been you creating it, and for it to be finally happening, I feel very honoured to be a part of it.
Well, you're the only one that said yes. That's I wanted to start with what you were like as a teenager.
I was always so sporty. That was my thing. And I think I probably struggled with that as well back then because I was kind of seen as like a tomboy. Whereas now I suppose if you play sport, and so many more girls play sport now, it's probably just, it's the norm. But back then I was so obsessed with football and then so obsessed with basketball. And I remember I was so unsure of myself because I wasn't like all the other girls really in school. I wanted to be playing football while they were going to discos, or they were talking about boys. I was like talking about basketball players. So I was very unsure of who I wanted to be. And probably looking back now, I was like, I wish I had have always just saying, no, this is what I want to do and this is who I am, and never to doubt myself, because I doubted myself so much. I was always very quiet. And
were you? Yeah.
Yeah, I was. But if you got to know me, I was probably the complete opposite. But in a group, I'd feel, just because I think I was so uncertain of myself, I didn't know who I was, and I really struggled with that growing up. But sport for me was my way of being able to show who, like, my identity.
Yeah.
And I used to just go out and always want to be the best, and I was like, I craved attention through sport, if that made sense. I remember I was going out, no, I'm going to do something here that people are going to be like, wow, who's that one? Or, do you know, I always wanted to be the best. But I think out of sport, I didn't have a clue who I was.
Yeah.
I didn't. And I really struggled fitting in with people or being in groups or anything like that. Was way out of my comfort zone. And I actually remember even a period in secondary school where I actually went completely like mute, like I stopped speaking because of just things that had happened, and I didn't know how to speak out, and I didn't know what right and wrong was, and I was so unsure that I actually just stopped talking at all.
Well, it's such a confusing stage, isn't it?
Yeah, I was so confused. And I remember even being a teenager, I've actually never spoke about this, but this just came back to me. I remember someone saying, oh, you must be a lesbian because you play sports.
Really?
And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, I'm not going to hang around with girls anymore now because people are going to think that. And I remember my own head being so confused, even though I knew, like, I just loved playing sport. And I was lost. I really was. And looking back now, I wish I had someone to nearly say, no, that's who you are and that's okay. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else, because I think growing up we didn't have a whole lot, and then I always looked at other people, oh, why did they have this and I didn't have other things, and say whatever girls in school had, whether they had like the latest trousers or style or the latest shoes, I never had that, and I always look going, oh, I really wanted that. But like, it's gas, because now when I got older, like, and I don't even like, say you look at someone and say, oh, they have these shoes, this, the latest things, like stuff like that for me is just not, material stuff is nothing.
And it takes a while to get there. I think that's why, and genuinely, that's why when I thought about who I'd like to have on as the first person on this, I was you all day long, Mal, because I think you are that example for so many young people, young girls, but also young guys, of getting to a place where you're comfortable in your own skin. But as you said, when we're that age, very often we're so unsure about who we even are. We don't know how to be comfortable in that person. And basketball kind of sent you into another world, like it sent you to the States. But how did that come about? Were you just always good at basketball, or did you work really hard at it?
Oh, at first I was soccer man, and I played GA because GA was like the normal thing to do. So that actually wasn't my first love, even though I still play football now, but it's not. Soccer was my first thing. I used to just was obsessed with Man United, like Eric Cantona. I couldn't do any wrong.
Eric Cantona, my favourite player.
Oh,
just his brashness.
I used to totally relate to him because I was a ball of anger as a kid, like, and I'd be like, oh yeah.
Were you a ball of anger even as a kid?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I suppressed everything, like, and I didn't know how to release it.
Yeah.
And even through sport, I couldn't release a certain amount of that. But through anger, I was able to release all my frustration.
On field?
Yeah, no, not even.
Oh.
Say even playing, like, do you know when people say, look, I'm able to release stuff, whether it's through exercise or whether it's reading, it could be art, whatever it is. Like, sometimes sport didn't do it for me, and I used to just suppress and build up, but I never spoke about it.
Yeah.
And it was my only way of coping, was just, I used to like that fuse to be gone.
Yeah.
I used to get so many red cards as a kid, and do you know what I mean? Just so angry.
Yeah.
Just a ball of anger. And then when I went from I went to secondary school then. I went the first year. I remember, I'll never forget it. My cousin actually said to me, why don't you come in and play? There was a team called the Cool Cats.
Yeah.
And Mr. C was the coach, and he was an elderly man, and he was the nicest person ever. And he was like, come on and play with the Cool Cats. And I was like, no, I didn't like basketball.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about it. I was really self-conscious about going into a new group of people and doing something I wasn't good at.
Yeah.
So that was way out of my comfort zone. And then I went with my cousin and her friend, and I went and I go, oh, this is like cool.
And what was it about that you liked so much?
I think that for me, soccer was probably easy and Gaelic football was easy, but this is a whole different challenge, and it was very technical. It was very quick, and it just, you couldn't stop for a second. It was go, go, go. And I think at the time, that's probably the way my mind worked as well.
It suited you.
It operated at a very high pace, like. And I remember going in and I just became obsessed with basketball. No, like total escapism through basketball, but like as a kid it was my survival mode. But like just, I remember getting a magazine, going in and buying a magazine, and there might maybe that much of USA basketball, and I buy the magazine just to go in and see it. All right, yeah. And like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Michael Jordan, they were all my heroes at the time.
Wow.
And just any little thing to do with basketball. But like
what was it that you were so in love with?
I don't know. To be honest, I think I fell in love with like the fairy tale of being able to go to America.
Yeah.
For me, that was like always the dream, and I was like, I wanted to go get out of Ireland, because I think I associated Ireland just with just pain and trauma and suffering. And like looking back, like people talk about childhood, like look, I had good memories, like a couple of good memories, especially with my brother and sister. We laugh about it, but like looking back at a bigger scale, it wasn't right. Like really? It wasn't like, and I think that the dream for me of America was everything. And I was like, I want to go play basketball in America. And I used to just bring it everywhere. I used to sleep with a basketball. I'd be in school dribbling it. It didn't matter.
Wow.
I'd be out, like I'd literally go from in the morning, like go out and play basketball. I used to have a little hoop on the road. Yeah. And I used to come in until like literally the street lamps were like gone. I was just all day practicing, repetition, the same thing. And then like I used to just, even my mindset back then, say I'd be practicing free throws and I'd be like, right, gonna shoot 10, and if you missed maybe one, you'd like, no, I'm staying out for another hour, I'm gonna practice.
Jeez, we're very alike.
No, I was so obsessed with it, like, and just perfection and stuff like that. So then I went to a camp in Dungarvan in County Waterford. It was called the Dungarvan Basketball Camp. Now it's not even running anymore, but I went down there, and I went there for the first year, and I was only a young kid, and I was only allowed to play there 1 year. The second year they were like, look, you're too good for the camp, you have to be a coach. And I was only a kid, and they were like, you can be a helper. But when I was down there, they were like, the American scouts would come over and they were like, you're good enough to play in America. And I'll never forget it. I was like, it was like someone believed in me.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah, and I was like, do you really think like, and someone believed in me? And I was like, and then that was even a different level. Then I was like, no, this is what I'm doing. So I went back every year, and then coaches would give me kind of contacts and stuff. And then what I did was, I'll never forget it, and I love telling this story because I was so driven though, Tony. I wanted to get to America, there was nothing stopping me.
Yeah.
And even I had gone into school, and I remember I was in 5th year, and the teacher said, like, what do you want to do with your life? And this is the standard in Ireland, we do our leaving cert, we go and apply for colleges and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm going to America to play basketball. And I remember they were like, is this one actually deluded? And I remember going into that meeting with the guidance counsellor, I think that's what they were called.
Yeah.
And she said, like, come on, Mary, you need to get a real job here. You need to get a real goal. And I remember thinking, do you know what? I am going to show you, like. Yeah. Remember, don't you ever tell me my dreams are too big, like. And that's what I'll always tell people, because it was like, if I had to listen to that, I never would have got to America. Yeah. But I went, and what I did was I started recording my games in school.
And did you come up with this yourself?
Yeah, so basically what the colleges wanted was they wanted a full game right through. There was no edits and a little highlight reel. So what I did was, any game I went to, I just got content, right? And just content and I just recorded them on this big old VHS camera. Like, it's so funny thinking about it. And like, I used to have someone say, one of my friends, I said, look, you just record and come to the game and just follow the game.
Follow you.
So I made like maybe 20 VHS tapes. I don't even know how I did it. Like, and I remember getting 20 envelopes, and I put them in, and I made a profile of me, and I actually found the profile last week.
You did not.
And it's 15-year-old Mary Hulgraine, like skin and bone, and like age, like achievements, what I want to do. Just a little A4 page. It's so funny. I'm gonna show it to you. I must send it to you. Yeah. And I put that in with the VHS and I picked these schools. Some of them I got in contact with from the coaches in Dungarvan.
Yeah.
And some of them I was like, no, I want to go there. I really set the goal high.
Yeah.
Sent them off in the post and said, right, something's going to come back from that. But I fully believed that.
Yeah.
Even the madness of it when I think about it now. Sending something off in the post, expected some college coach in America to receive it. And then they did. I think 5 schools got back to me. And then there was one school called the University of Bridgeport that the coach was like really interested in me. But what happened was, because I went to St. Mary's College in secondary school, they thought that that wasn't a high school, it was a college. And they were kind of like, you have to get through the clearinghouse. Did you have that issue when you were over there? So you had to get through an organisation called the clearinghouse. I don't know if it's the same anymore, but like academically, you basically had to get all your grades ready through this organisation. And they thought that basically I had been in a college in America, so it wasn't getting passed through. Okay. So it was about a year and a half, and I was saying to all the teachers, no, I'm going to America and that's what I'm doing. And they all thought I was marvellous. And I'll never forget it. I came home one day and my mother was there and she said to me, no, you have to get a real job now and start giving up money. And I said, I can't go and go to college or do anything because I can't go to America then. But I came home one day, I was 16, and she had black bags at the door and she said, no, you're getting kicked out. Now, she did this to us all the time, but we used to laugh about it.
Yeah.
But this time, for some reason, I said, yeah, well, I'm gone. And I took the bags and I went into my friend's house in Naas. Yeah. And I slept on her couch for a week. And then I went to Belfast. I met a friend up there and I stayed up there for maybe about 9 months with him and his partner. And then all I did was just play basketball all day. Just all day. And I used to work in the next warehouse from like 9 p.m. to like 3 in the morning. I'd come home, sleep for maybe an hour or two, and then I'd just play basketball all day. And I was walking through Queen's University. I'll never forget it one day. And I got a call. I had this phone, like that just the American coaches were ringing me off. Yeah. Just little. It was probably this size. Yeah. And I remember getting a call.
Bringing around a bag.
Yeah, it was huge. And I remember, so this is like, we're talking, I'm 35 now. I would have been, this is 20 years ago. And I remember getting a phone call and it was like, this is Coach Mark McCaleb from the University of Bridgeport. Your scholarship's after coming through. I need you here in 2 days. Wow. And I remember just being like this overwhelming sensation just going down my body, being like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, it was like the moment caught up with your dream, because this is what you'd held on to so fast.
Yeah. And no one else believed me. I think that was the thing. I was like, I knew what I wanted and I was like tunnel vision to what I wanted to get. But even looking back, I suppose that my mental resilience back then was through the roof. Like,
even though there was so much going on and at times you felt uncomfortable and like you didn't fit in, you still had that great, like, deeper self-belief.
Yeah, I always have. I think no matter what, if I stepped out on a pitch or a court, no matter what it was, I always had this mindset that there was nobody on that pitch or that court that was better than me. Okay. But I didn't look at myself that I was better than them. Yeah. I just knew that no one was better than me, that I was going to work harder than anybody. I was going to prepare better than anyone. Yeah. And because I did suffer with my head, but I knew that if I prepared right, I was able to silence the enemy in my head. Yeah. And I was able to silence the demons because I said, no, I know I've prepared for this. Yeah. But whereas if the demons come in and they were like, you didn't do this, you should have shot 200 free throws last night, not 100. Like, that's how easy it could have crept into my mind. And I think that self-doubt is what like can cause like a lot of people failing. Yeah. And so I knew from preparation like that, and when I got it, I just was like, I couldn't believe it.
And so, did you make it in the 2 days? Because I presume even things like financially getting a flight back then.
Yeah, so I came back.
All those things weren't easy.
And I'd never been on like an airplane. Like, I remember the first airplane I ever took was to New York City. It was mad when you think about it. I came home and a couple of my cousins and stuff came over to say goodbye to me, and then I got a flight to JFK. And sure, I just landed in JFK with my suitcases or whatever. One suitcase, one bag, like. And I remember even the coach at the time was just kind of going, is that all you brought? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't know what I was going. I've only ever seen America what was on the telly. TV. Yeah. So I didn't really know. And I remember, and he pulled up with this big college van and stuff, and sure, I hadn't a clue what it was, and I was just thinking, this is class, like. And sure, I went over then, and like, it's so funny when I look back now, I just played basketball all day. I didn't go to college, even though I was in college and I was registered. I didn't go because I actually just wanted to play basketball. They pulled me up after about 6 weeks. They're like, Mary, listen, we need to sit you down. And I was like, what? They're like, you're failing all your classes, like, you're not going to be eligible. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. And they were like, no, like, do you understand how serious school is here? Yeah. And I was like, all right. So I wasn't allowed to train for about a month. And while the team trained, I had to sit in the room next. Like, it was a big window so you could see what was going on. And I used to have to do study hall.
Just like David Beckham with Real Madrid.
I used to have to do study hall.
Train with the team.
Yeah. And it's like the assistant coach, who I'm such good mates with still today, Coach P was her name, and she's an amazing person. And she used to sit in with me. Oh, and she was so good to me. When I look back, like, and even like say like their beliefs and principles, it was more than about just basketball, it was about life. And I think they knew that I was broken as well. And they were like, they were so encouraging. I never was exposed to any of that, like, do you know that kind of American mindset where it's real motivating and inspiring, and I just loved it. Like,
oh yeah, sure. I remember going to university in Canada, same thing. It's the mindset you want to be around, or more of that. But you know, I think what's amazing about your story and your life is you have such self-belief in some regards, and then there's these highs where you go and you get your dream. But it's like all of our lives, that's not what it's all about. There's reasons beyond what we think there is, like, because what happened to you next in during the scholarship, like your injury, it kind of set the trajectory of your life for a period of time. But before that occurred, was there a part of your being there where you felt, I am living the dream, like this is what I wanted?
Yeah, 100%. Like, and I think it was like, do you know, like in life when you say, oh, I'll be happy once I get this, and you get it, and then it's just like, this isn't happiness. Like, but when I got to America, I was like, no, this is. I was like, I thought, like, I remember someone basically saying to me, and I actually heard this in recovery, and I related so much to it. But like, someone said, listen, if you have a bag of shit and you take the bag of shit and you post it to America, and you open the bag of shit in America, what is that when you open it? It's still a bag of shit. Like, and I was like, I related to that because like I thought when I went to America, all my problems were going to be left behind, and that everything was going to change, and that my mindset was I was going to be a new person, but like. And I was for a certain time, but like all the stuff I suppose I left, like that I done dealt with when I was younger, like that was still there. It was dormant, but it was still very present. Like,
so tell us about the injury.
So it was my second year there, and we were playing 3-on-3, and I'll never forget it. I jumped up to catch a ball, and whatever way I came down, I crushed my ankle completely. And I think because I had the first surgery, right, which was like a kind of a scope to go in and see, and then they were like, no, we need to do the complete reconstruction. But I think when I did the first scope, it kind of hit me then, listen, your dream is gone here. In my own head, that's where I was just like, you're not going to be able to play basketball. Now, I never had an injury growing up where it was like, you can't play sport. I think I had an open fracture on a finger playing GAN. That was it. So there was never a period of time where I didn't have sport. And now it was gone. And I think I didn't know what like depression was, or I didn't know anything to do with mental health, any of what that was. But looking back now, like I was so low at that period in my life, after that first surgery, like, and then I think when I had the second surgery and then I got the OxyContin, it was like all of this disappeared. All the mental like anguish, noises that was going on in my head, like everything that was been said, oh, this is done, you're like, what are you going to do now? And it's just all the doubt was just, it was gone, and all the physical pain, everything was just and I was like, what is this? And I just got like, I think the addiction was definitely, it was there, it was lying dormant, and it was like, right, now we're going to look at all the undealt trauma.
It's probably the obsessive mentality as well. Every gift has its curse, and every curse has its gift. But it latched onto this, and if there was the trauma there and the experiences in early teenage years that were so painful, at some level, when you couldn't keep running from it because you couldn't actually play, the OxyContin probably just took so much away.
Yeah, and I think that they just disappeared. Whereas they didn't. Like, they didn't at all. They were still there. So that was like a big, wow, this numbs everything. And then it was like, well, look, I'm going to be gone now for the next, I don't know how long. So, and I definitely wasn't ready to deal with, I didn't deal with anything. See, when something happened, I just keep going. I didn't know, there was no stop button. It was just go, 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 go. And like, that's just the way it was. And then all of a sudden it was like, right, you're forced to be stopped now. It's like, I didn't know what to do. So I chased that numbness then, and I really did. And even then when I wasn't getting like prescribed the OxyContin, I'd went looking for it, like.
Where would you find it?
Like, so like I knew, like, say there was like our campus was like really, really was lovely, but if you stepped off campus, like, it was a different story. Like, you were right in the ghetto, like, but there was like, say, a liquor store off campus, like, and you could get what you wanted, like. So I knew like what to do and where to go, and I was hiding it then, and like all the behaviours now looking back were like so clear, but I didn't see it. And I was like, no, I'll come back now and be grand. But I remember saying, oh, I'm going to stop taking that. And I remember, I'll never forget, like, it was I couldn't stop sweating. I was like in a ball in the corner.
You tried to stop.
I tried to stop taking it, like, and it was like, I didn't realise how much this has actually controlled my whole life.
Why did you come back? Like, because you were injured and you didn't look like you were going to play again? Or
So I stayed there.
Did they find out about the OxyContin?
No, I got the injury was into February, and then I stayed there until the May when school finished, and then I came home that summer. I remember my little sister was there and she was struggling being at home. My mum wasn't well at the time and she was in addiction, and my little sister was there and she was still struggling, and I felt really guilty going back over to America that year, and I did. And then that whole year then the calls were coming in and it was really frustrating to hear. And then when I went home the following summer, I stayed home. I said, I can't go back
again.
Yeah, and it was just, whereas I think the first time in my life, I think, was that day with the black bags, and I said, no, I'm gone, good luck.
Yeah.
I always kind of put other people first, but that day I said, no, I'm going to follow my dream and good luck to you.
Yeah.
But it was like when I seen what was going on, I totally felt guilty for walking away that day from the door with the black bags, because I was like, I've kind of left her, like.
Yeah.
So
you and your sister are very close. Like, I've talked to her on the phone when she rings, and she rings all the time. And
it's just. But you know what? When I look at it now, it suited me to come back, because when I came back then, the summer I kind of fallen into the kind of the pub culture.
Yeah.
And I never really drank or anything like that, but then it was like, come on, we go out and have a few pints. But of course, like, when you're so driven with other things and like you're just constantly chasing that numbness or that high, and then I fell into drinking, and then I fell into cocaine, and then it was tablets, and it was whatever could take away what was going on in my head, because it was like drink stopped working. Yeah. Then I started taking cocaine. Yeah. Cocaine stopped working. Then I'd be like, right, I'll mix this with this. And it was always what's next.
And what do you think, because I've heard you talk about this before, that like the addiction, whatever, whether it be drink or drugs, that it somehow numbed the pain. Do you think that, what was the pain?
Looking back now, and I think Bailey's taught me so much in life, right? And I know he's just a dog, but he really has, because he was the first thing in my life that I ever connected to. I was never able to connect to anything. And I think I always had that disconnect in me. And from having that, I think I always...
From yourself.
Yes. Yeah. It was a disconnection from self completely. But when I found, like, sport first, I felt like I belonged and I was connected. And then when that was gone, it was like, right, this connect is still here.
Yeah.
So I found addiction then, and I was like, oh, right. So it was love.
Yeah.
That's what I really think it was. Yeah. Now, I thought it was love through sport, through drink, through drugs or other things, but it was me, because I hated myself. And I really did. And I, like, as a young girl, even growing up, I valued myself like a piece of dirt.
Really?
And I did. And looking, like, it hurts me now thinking back to where I was, because I was
hard
like,
to hear you say that.
How did you not, like, you were so, like, cute and you were just beautiful, and I never seen that. I always looked in the mirror and I'd be like, oh, look at the state, look at that, you know what I mean? And I never loved myself, but I think that's what I always chased. I always chased that connection of love through something.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever had that until I got Bailey. And then I was like, oh, it was like, what is this? And I'll never forget it, because that same feeling when I had that first tablet, it was like, this is love, this is a connection. Yeah. And then I got it with the OxyContin. But then I got it naturally through love, through having responsibility, through this dog, that I was like, it was all around the same team, even though they're very different.
Yeah, and because it's funny, when you were saying, we were chatting earlier about when you're driven, like you were so driven to get to the States. And I understand that, especially around the sport and how it gives you a sense of value. But it's almost like you were brought there to experience what you did through just going through everything with the OxyContin, coming back, to almost like go through addiction. I know this sounds crazy, but you were brought to the dream to go through the pain, to find Bailey, but also find yourself.
100%. Like I'm a total firm believer that everything in my life, I wouldn't change any of it, because I wouldn't be where I am today. I know that's really cliche, but I look back going like, if this didn't, like, the smallest little things, like, what if just that one little thing changed, then it changed the whole course of my life. Yeah. And I look now saying, like, at the time that was so painful, but look, there's like a lesson or a blessing in everything. Yeah. And I do believe that, like,
because, you know, you can be cynical about these things, or you can, because when you told me about meeting Bailey, because I'm from Clare, and you said you were coming back from Clare, I remember you were saying you were driving, you were pissed, and someone sold you at a petrol station this little puppy who was like brown.
I don't, like, it's even thinking back to then, like, what drew me towards him. Like, I just remember looking, and he was the last little pup left in this white van at this Maxall garage, like, and he was covered in pee and he was rotten, and I just, like, this just felt so sorry for him. And I was like, I'm taking him. I was like, that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. I remember giving out to your man, and I remember going in and being like, and I remember putting him on my lap in the car.
Driving.
And it was a 98 Polo, and I no insurance, nothing on it. I didn't care, and he sat on my lap the whole way home.
And that's a 3-hour drive home
and
for you.
Yeah, and in a 98 Polo, it's probably a 6-hour drive. And I remember the smell of him in the car was horrendous, like. And I remember just getting home, putting him into the kitchen sink, and he just came up like this polar bear, and I was like, I just love you. I just adore you.
And were you in the throes of addiction then? Because I remember you saying about
yeah.
living in this house where it was like derelict almost indoors, and you were sleeping in the car, or like.
Yeah, so that was the year after. I had Bailey for about a year then, and we were like, it was the following year then that I was living somewhere, and then I was like, oh, I need to try and get a house that'll allow me have the dog. And then I couldn't get anywhere, so I started just basically sleeping in the car. But Bailey was with me through it. He slept on a shed floor, he slept in the car, he didn't care. And I remember he used to sleep in the back seat, and I'd put the driving seat back a little bit, and I'd sleep there, and he'd be panned out in the back seat, not a bother on him. But he didn't care. He just, once he had me, do you know that kind of way?
And that was probably the first time in your life anyone had just been with you. And do you know what I mean? Like, just there.
Oh, he just did.
I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm just here for you.
Yeah. But I'm such a firm believer that God sent that dog to protect me. Like,
do you think?
Yeah. When I look back now, like, I wouldn't be here without him. And I know that probably sounds a bit mad, but there were so many times.
Not to me, it doesn't.
Where I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I really struggled with like suicidal thoughts for a long time, and I was like, I don't want to be like, because when like sport had gone, like for me it was like, the dream was shattered. I fell back into this routine of like going out like constantly, always having to be away from reality. So I was either drinking or taking drugs. There had to be something in my system.
Yeah.
And then it was like, the dream's definitely over now. So I currently jumped on that and kind of literally used that to be like, oh, I'm a victim here, like because of an injury. But sure, like it suited me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then like when I was lost. I was so lost. And then when I had him, it was like, just this little gap inside my heart was just filled. Like,
was there a time when you were in that period of feeling so lost that, you know, you hear about rock bottom and what does that mean? And that breakdown being a breakthrough. But was there a moment in that period that it just got too much? Like that there was, because I know we've talked about this, and that's something we've shared, is both of us at some point in our life didn't want to be here. And it's an awful place to be because it's so lonely.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's an emptiness that you can't even describe to someone unless they have felt it. Like, because I know some people even like, how selfish was that person taking their own life? You have no idea. You don't think about like your kids. You don't think about your partner. It's just you want to get away from this pain that is going on inside you. And I think I had these thoughts for a long time, and I never, like, I'd overdosed multiple times. I'd been in situations that I shouldn't have come out of, and I tried to take my own life multiple times and I'd failed. But I woke up one day and I was like, no, I had enough. But I used to always look at Bailey and I'd be like, who's going to mind him? Because we were so close and we were like a team, and I was like, he doesn't know anybody else. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it today. And I'd bring him for a walk. Yeah. And then my mindset had changed a little bit. Yeah. But whatever, this one day I woke up and I knew what I was doing, and I knew, whereas I had failed before, I knew that this time this was what I was at. This was the day. Yeah, this was it, like, because I couldn't take the pain anymore. And I went for a walk. I said, look, I'll walk you one more time. And I knew what I was doing, went for a walk, and as we were coming back up from the walk, and I always remember telling this story, like, just early on in recovery, like, and it was just, and then just this changed. And I didn't really think anything of it. Yeah. Because, you know, you hear these miraculous, like, divine interventions where someone's jumping off a bridge and God puts a whale underneath you and you live.
We were talking about that earlier.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, I was like, mine isn't like that whatsoever. Like, mine's so minute compared to, like, those stories. But, like, when I look at it now, like, God was all over it, like.
So tell us about that. I think there's so many people, Mal, that when they hear your story, they will get some hope from it. Yeah. And I think the more we tell people that they're, you know, you can call it God, you can call it spirit, call it whatever you wish, that we're not always alone. And I think your story is a story where someone moved into your path, and in a very subtle way, that man you met. And
I think that's what you just said. I think I felt so alone. I didn't think there was a greater being or there was anything out there. I just thought there was just me, and that, like, no one loved me and no one wanted me, and I like no one would miss me if I was gone. Like, they were my thoughts. And like, looking back now, it's so distorted. Like, and I was walking back up the road, and we just did the same little loop we did every day. We take a right outside my house. We're right on the curb, and we did the same little loop. And as we were coming up the road, this man, an elderly man, came down, and he had like a little Jack Russell dog. But I used to walk, like I always talk about, because I was so, like, I hate myself, and I used to have this hood and this overcoat, and it was green, and like I used to walk with my head down, because if you said hello to me, I'd be like, I was so paranoid and so full of fear. But anyway, this man said hello, and I remember, and he had this little Jack Russell, and I remember him just looking at Bailey, and he said, "Isn't he a gorgeous dog?" And I remember just looking at Bailey a little bit different, and I was like, "Yeah, he is, isn't he?" And he just put his hand on my shoulder like that. And it was that touch that man gave me that day. And he just said, "I hope you have a wonderful day."
Wow.
And I was just, didn't think anything of it. And when I think about it now, you're walking up the path and an old man comes up and puts his hand on you. Like, but like, I think that was so important, because I remember looking back then, and I was kind of looking for him, and I couldn't see him. And I never seen that man before. Wow. And as I was walking back up the road that day, it had gone from me being in the, like, such a low and so dark, to this man putting his hand on my shoulder, and it was like a touch of hope, like a touch of light. And whatever it was in that man, the bit of hope he gave me, I said, "I wonder if I stop drinking and taking drugs, will it fix me head?" Yeah. And it was the first time in my life I ever thought that I had a problem. I said, "I wonder if I just stop, and maybe this is what I thought. I thought, would it fix the chemical imbalance that I've caused in my brain?" Yeah. Because I actually thought there was something mentally wrong with me. Really? And I remember looking back, and I couldn't see him, and every day then, I made a phone call that day, and I made a phone call to someone that I knew was in recovery, and I said, "Listen, can you tell me how you stopped drinking?" Right. And that was...
Was that a hard call to make?
Yeah. Yeah. The hardest thing I ever done in my life, probably.
Why? Just because the fear, or what would they think, or was it?
I think both. But I think that I was so independent growing up, right? And it was definitely a thing about pride and ego, because I did everything myself, and I grew up myself, and this and that. And that was my survival tool for so long. And it kept me safe, I guess. Yeah. And all of a sudden then I was dropping the walls and saying, "I need help here. I'm in a bit of bother." And I really struggled with that. And I remember knowing that I was going to make a call. I think it took me hours to make the phone call. And I remember making the call then, and I got a voicemail, and I was like, the relief.
Yeah, no, I don't have to talk to them.
But no, I don't have to talk to them. But I made the call. Yes. And that was the initial first step. And like, I've made calls that are like, and done things now in the last number of years that have been way on a different level than that. Yeah. But to me, that was the hardest day of my life. Was the first time I ever said, "I need help."
But when you made that call, you didn't just get the voice note or the voicemail. Yeah. You called back, and so what happened next?
Like, when I look back now, it was a long journey. And so when I went to, basically, the man I'd rang came and said to me, "Look, I'm going to bring you to a meeting." And I went in and sat there, and I listened, and I didn't relate to anyone. And I said, "No, this isn't for me. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm never coming back here." And I said, "Not a hope. These are all mental," right? And he said to me, "I'm going to drop you off now." I went home, I had a few cans, and I went to bed the next morning, right? He said, "I'm collecting you, we're going to another meeting tonight." He went in, brought me to a little meeting in a little schoolroom. And I remember a man got up and shared a story about drink and drugs. And I listened to everything he said, and I related to everything he said.
Why the change in 24 hours? The way he told it?
I don't know whether it was the way I was listening, or that his story was so much more relatable to mine. Yeah. Like, someone could relate to one thing I said, like, and they could say, "Oh no, I felt that way." But I've related to 80-year-old men in rooms, and I'd say, "I completely relate to your thinking back then." Yeah. So I think it doesn't matter. Like, I think one person's story, they can say, "Look, I'm an alcoholic or an addict," but I say, "I wasn't like that." But then the next person can say, "This is me," and I can say, "I completely relate to you." So do you know what I mean? So
yeah, I do. That makes sense.
So that man that day, the Tuesday, I related to everything, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I am supposed to be here." Now, that was my first day trying to be clean and sober, and I couldn't. So I was drinking and using every day, to all of a sudden they're saying complete abstinence now, you have to stop this. Yeah. And I couldn't. And I really struggled, because I hadn't lived in reality for so long. I hadn't. And all of a sudden, like, you're trying to get up now and get to 12 o'clock without taking something, and it's like, it's impossible. Yeah. So I really struggled for the first 3 years. I relapsed constantly for 3.5 years.
And did you keep trying to, like, so you'd relapse, but something brought you back?
I knew I was supposed to be there.
Okay.
Deep down, I knew I was supposed to be there because something would be said in a meeting and I'd get a conviction and I'd be like, oh. But I'd go home and I'd no control then over not going and getting whatever I was getting. Do you know what I mean? And like the harsh reality of it was like at that age, I was sleeping in a derelict house on a mattress. The dog was at the bottom. I go to a meeting, I come back, I take enough stuff to get me out of my head to wake up the next day.
Yeah.
And I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I tried and I did. And then I tried to get into treatment centre. I found out I was pregnant at the time.
Okay.
That was, and then I went AWOL then.
I didn't know that,
yeah. Then I went AWOL then thinking, oh no, this isn't, I can't have a child.
Yeah.
And then one day I was at a meeting and this was in 2020 and I tried for so long. And a man came up to me at a meeting, I'll never forget it because it freaked me out. And I was really trying and he came up to me and says, your drinking drug problem has absolutely nothing to do with drinking drugs. And I was floored to the seat. I was stuck to the seat. And he goes, it's to do with your thinking. It's to do with your head. And I was like, what? And I was like, this man knows something about me. Yeah. I was so freaked out. And he's just like, no one's coming to save you. And like that, I was just like, I don't know. Do you know when you talk about these light bulb moments and like, it's like just the light goes on. But like, I think and something I've learned to think for myself in the last little while is I could hear a message 20 times and it's unless I'm ready to receive it. 100%. And unless I'm ready to receive, it's not going to register. But that day I received. Yeah, I really received that day.
What did it tell you? That there's more to this?
I constantly played victim mentality. Okay. Because I've been through this, you be doing what I was doing. I drink a drug because I'm trying to take away the emotional and mental pain that are going on from what has happened to me in my life. Yeah. And I played victim. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he was like, listen, no one's coming to help you. No one's coming to save you. You're the only person that can save you. And I was just like, it was like this switch went off and it was like, right, everyone was coming to my house to collect me, to bring me to meetings, or they were saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. And the thing with me is if you tell me to go one way, I'm going the other.
I know that.
Yeah. And I've always been that way. And
I relate to it.
Yeah. I think it's that mentality when you've been so independent and stuff as well. Like you're just.
Like when you raised yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because so much what you're saying, I relate to.
Yeah.
Like so much, you know, maybe not the addiction, but I've had people in my life who suffer from addiction. So
yeah, but you're led to the mind, to the thinking, yeah.
100%.
So, like, I think, like, and I say this and people think I'm probably mad, like, but, like, drinking drugs saved my life and it did. Because if I didn't have it, to live in my own mind when I didn't have sport was a very dangerous place for me to be. And so that day, something just went, and then I started ringing people, listen, any chance of giving me a lift? I need to get here. And I wanted to get well.
So now you were on board.
Like now all of a sudden something changed that I was like, I want to get well.
Yeah.
And
because you realised it wasn't just about the drugs or the alcohol, the drink, or it was about something else and you want to understand that something else.
I knew I went and actually got a counsellor then and I started talking, and when I look back now, that was the second probably thing that was the hardest for me to do ever. Was I was 28 years old. I'd never spoke about anything that had went on in my life. And I went into a counsellor. I'd been to about 8 of them, to be honest, because I thought, look, I go in and sit beside someone and there'd be some old lady, and no disrespect, but when I go in and talk about something and they'd be there, yeah, give me the €80 and they wouldn't relate to what I was saying. But I kept trying. And so, no, you have to go back to that counsellor. I said, no, I'm not going back. I don't relate to them. They're not the person for me. And I found my counsellor. Yeah. And it was maybe the 8th one, but I found him. And for something like that. And I can't explain it, but I just knew. I was like, I'm going to tell you everything. Yeah. And like that, I just started talking. And then everything just started coming out. And I was like, and that was a very painful process as well.
Must have been, because that was locked in the basement for many years.
Yeah. And there was such a resistance there to speak out. Like I couldn't even. I actually remember I had to write it. The first thing I wanted, couldn't verbalize it. I was in so much pain, and it was like I was silenced so much to be able to say, listen, I need to talk about this. I couldn't. I had to write it on a piece of paper, and I said, I need to talk about that. Yeah. And it was like, but I learned even in that way, there's always a way. It might not work that way for me or that way for you, but there's always a way to find.
Not to give up, to keep looking for the way. And I think for people listening to this is, if you can't speak it, write it. If you can't write it, as you say, there is a way.
Yeah.
And so when you started the counselling, because I think the important thing to stress is it's not like you have your light bulb moment and it's all perfect. Like there are ups and downs in all our lives. And sometimes we don't know how close we are to a little down. You know, we're going to trip someday and it's okay. They all pass. And I've heard you say that nothing lasts forever. But your time in counselling, Was that where you really started to turn a corner?
Yeah, but it took time. It did, because even some weeks I'd probably go in and I'd feel like you come out there and you feel really elated because it's like like something you've never done before. The next day I'd wake up and you couldn't get me out of bed. Yeah. I was floored and I was stuck to the bed maybe with like an emotional hangover from it. So it was so like, I actually thought like, I thought I was going backwards. And when I seen a thing only recently, and I can't remember who wrote it, but they were saying like, when you're on God's path, like it's not linear. It's not like this, right? You don't go forwards, you don't go backwards. What happens is it's like a stairway. So you go up and you progress. But then you might just chill for a little while. Yeah. But then you're going to progress again. So it's a constant stair. It's not like this. And you don't, it's not a setback. Yeah. So to say. And so I only made a video recently, like when you get kind of set back, it's a setup for something else. Yeah. But I used to kick the head off myself because I had that mindset of like, I'm failing now. And I was like, why am I bad today? I was good yesterday. Yeah. But I was still moving forward. It was all part of the process. So that was very painful. But looking back now, like I thought it was going to last forever. And even sometimes when you're going through things, you think there's no way out. There is. Absolutely. Yeah, there's always light. And something I think that for me, I always think of, no matter how, if today I have a bad day, listen, the sun rises tomorrow. And you get another go at this, just get through. It does, the sun always rises. Just get through today. Yeah. And when you think about it, you walk into a dark room, it's completely dark, you turn the light on, the light completely takes out the darkness. The light completely takes out the darkness. And now I know that, because not all days were great. Now, since my journey and my faith has got like a different level. Yeah, let's talk about that, because I was telling you, there's a friend of mine, Tony Bates, and I remember hearing him say, very, very wise man, and he said once that when he's on radio, he said it's almost more dangerous now to talk about spirituality than it is sex. Yeah. Whereas years ago, it was the other way around. So, because I didn't realize, like when I first went to you to do the personal training and rebuild everything, it was 2020. So you were still in the throes of things. See, I would have been, so I was in recovery, right? But I was still, what I was doing was like, when I think back, like how much of, like I couldn't be honest, right? So I'd go into a room and I'd say I wasn't drinking. I'd say I'm sober. Yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm sober. But I was eating Xanax, Valium, mixing everything. Do you know what I mean? So I was eating tablets then. Yeah. So like, and that was still an escapism. So I wasn't, say, drinking, but I was finding other ways. Okay. And then, like, it didn't matter what it was. I'd try and find escapism in anything. And then obviously sport. And that's something we have. And that's what I love. We haven't even touched on the fact that you're an all-star Gaelic footballer. You've won two All-Irelands. 2 Intermediate All-Irelands. 2 Intermediate All-Irelands. I remember you saying once that before an All-Ireland final, like you had 8 cans, but to still go out and perform the way you did. That was 2016, and I was in the height of it then. I went back playing football that year because I thought, look, if I get back into the routine of county football and stuff, it'll give me structure and it'll be great, and I'll stop doing what I'm doing. Yeah. The Saturday before, the Friday night we were training, actually, Christy Moore came up to us on the Friday night in St. Conleth's Park and played like a private, intimate gig for us. The manager had organised it. And I was like, this is mighty. Went home, had a few cans, woke up the next day and I said, no, preparation for me All-Ireland final, I'm not going to have anything today, right? Now, I got till about 12 o'clock and I said, no, do you know what, I'll have a few cans. But I went up and I remember buying 8 cans. And I remember I actually bought Copperberg and I didn't even drink that. But in my own head, like how distorted I was thinking, if I have a bit of that, sure, that won't really do anything to me. So I'll just have a few cans of that. Sure, that's light, like. I won't touch anything else. It's amazing how we can play tricks and... But mentally, I was going into Crow Park thinking, this is grand now. Like, this is my preparation. I'm going to be mentally prepared more than any of them. That is one of the things that really amazed me about you is, like, within that is incredible mental strength. Because having played in Crow Park, with all my faculties, it's a scary place to be. Yeah. It's a hard place to be. People don't appreciate how when you've 60, 70, 80,000 people around you and everything you do is so scrutinized and has to be perfect, there's a lot riding on it. But for you to do that and play so well and contribute, it just speaks to me of your mental strength. So you've kind of turned this experience in your life into how to inspire people. Yeah, so I was actually in a hospital. It was it a year and nearly 2 years ago. And I remember with your heart. I was, yeah. So I come off everything, right, and everything was great, and I was getting clean and sober, right. And then someone said to me, I was eating Northern Plus, right. Yeah. And a sponsor at the time said, you can't do that. And I said, no, they're only Northern Plus, they're grand. Yeah. He said, no, you can't take them, they're addictive. I said, I'll stop taking them. Didn't think anything of it. Stopped taking them, right. went into awful withdrawals. Didn't realise how dependent on codeine I was.
Okay.
But anyway, I ended up in hospital with a blood clot in my heart, and I ended up having heart trouble and stuff, right? Because look, I didn't realise that at the time, and I was very naive at the time, but I didn't, how like addictive, like the likes of sulfidine, norepinephrine plus, how all those drugs are, right? And ended up having a lot of trouble with my heart. And then someone actually, I remember it was my sponsor at the time, texted me and said, how do we get out of self?
Yeah.
I remember he sent me this in a text message. How do we get out of self? Because I was completely wrapped in the bondage of self-pity and going, oh, why me and this again, right? And I remember thinking, and I was like, what's he on about? And then I remember writing back to him, thinking of others. And I said, right, I'm sitting in a hospital bed. I'm going to be stuck here for a while. How can I help people here? And I remember going, I'm going to make a video. I don't know where it came out. I was going to make a video. And I hadn't even got TikTok at the time. And I said, I'll make a TikTok. And I remember saying like, I can't even remember what the first video was about helping someone. And then it took off a little bit. And then sure, people kept on watching them. And I was like, oh, these are helping people. So kind of make a couple of videos. And they were all about, say, like recovery, addiction, inspiring people, motivation. And then in February this year, it was last year, I was with someone and my partner at the time said to me, you need to go and meet this man. And I was like, no, look, I'm grand, I'm 3 years clean and sober, I'm doing well and things are going well. And they're like, no, you really need to go see this man. And I was like, all right, like, who is he? It's just like, he's just meet him. And I hadn't a clue what I was going into, right? And his name was Joe Corrigan. And he was in Trinity Church in Gardner Street in Dublin. And I remember going in and I went into prayer ministry. They do this thing on a Tuesday and it's prayer ministry where they go and help people and it's all voluntary and bring people in and they basically kind of talk to them about stuff and then they pray with them, right? But I hadn't a clue what I was going into, right? Sat down and said, well, what's going on with you? I said, I'm grand. She's not bothering me. I said, grand. Yeah, but what's really going on with you? I said, nah, my life is all right. But anyway, next of all, they start saying, oh, we'll pray with you. And these people start praying over me. And I was like, what is going on here? And then this lady starts talking about Jesus. And I'm like, I was like, lads, get me out of this room. I was like, these are mental cases. So I was completely judgmental. This was my mindset. That these people were like holy joes or Bible bashers, whatever to do, to go and preach the word of God and that's it, right? And I was like, I'm never coming back. Now I went for maybe a week or two and that, right? I walked away from it, right? I wasn't able to be honest completely with certain things, right? I had a boyfriend at the time, but I got pregnant. And then in my own head, I said, well, these are definitely going to look down on this because I guess you have to, I didn't really know. I was like, I guess you have to be married if you want to get pregnant with this crack. And I was like, didn't know, right? And I said, no, I can't go back up there. They're going to look down at me. And so I didn't go back, right? And then in February, I was 4 months pregnant and then I lost the baba. And I'll never forget, I was in hospital tone, right? And I was in a ball of pain, right? And I was sitting there and I've like that feeling of just being so alone again came to me, right? And I said, God, when I get through this, I'm going to go back to that church because there's something there that I want. I don't know what it is, but whatever I have to do to get this pain that's going on inside me, it's never left me. I don't want it anymore. It was more than just about losing the baby. Right? And I was sitting there in the bed and next of all, the man, Joe, texted me, hey, how are you? I hope you're well. No one knew I was in hospital. No one knew what had gone on. And I remember looking at the text message and I was like, well, that's the freakiest thing ever. And I was like, right. But I knew God was saying to me, I heard you. I heard your prayer. I'm going to look after you and you're going to get through this, right?
Because like when that happened, I remember when you lost the baby, I remember thinking, when you told me you were pregnant, I was thinking, she's going to be one incredible mother. Like, what a mum she's going to be. And
something that I think, do you know, I didn't have a family growing up, like a family. And something that has always been a dream of mine now is that someday I have a family and it's a happy family and it's the way it's supposed to be. And I think I was so excited. And then it was just like, anyone that's been through that, and you're past the stage where you're kind of out of the rocky stage now. You're planning, people are giving you gifts and stuff. And you're like, it's definitely it's so hard because you've got all these like things in your head that you're planning for, and now it's just like it's gone. Like that's kind of probably the hardest bit. But it was like I always wanted a family, and then
and you will you'll I can just I know Bailey isn't well at the moment, and you were saying don't ask me about Bailey being sick. So I'll tear up, but you'll be a great mom.
I know, and someday, like please God, hopefully it'll work out. But I remember. I was there and I was like, I'm going to the church the minute I leave.
Really?
Yeah. the minute I leave. So I got out of the hospital, and then I wasn't well even at that. Like, so I ended up having 4 blood transfusions, and I had to have 2 surgeries. It didn't go to plan. I ended up, because I was actually doing a TV show with TG4 at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know I was pregnant. And then before the game, then I found out, and I was like, I didn't know whether because I was so confused. I was like, one side of me was saying, oh, brilliant, this is what you've always wanted. But like the enemy was getting in here saying, you don't deserve to be a mother after everything you've done. You're going to be brutal. Yeah. And I was struggling to block that noise out. So ended up going back to the church, and I remember going in and I said, listen, whatever I need to do, whatever God wants me to do, I said, I'm willing to put 2 feet in here. I don't know why I'm being drawn back here, but I want whatever ye have. And that whole week, it was like, because I went and I declared, listen, I need 2 feet in here with God.
It was like another call for help in a way.
I completely surrendered to him. We spoke about it. When you completely surrender, it's like, my will has gone out here. You're in control. I'm out of the way. Take over. And it was like, that whole week, it was like, Tom, what happened? It was like those thoughts of wanting to take my own life again were back. And then something on my heart told me to go to service on a Sunday up in the church. And I was like, Thursday, no, I wanted to wake up and take my own life. And I was like, them thoughts
I've never heard you talk about that.
No, because I haven't talked about this. Yeah. And I haven't done podcasts since, to be honest, because in the last maybe 7-8 months, I've just probably looked after myself.
Yeah.
So I haven't really spoke about any of this.
Yeah.
So this was on the...
Did you go on the Sunday?
So everything was trying to get me out of going to church on the Sunday. I went up to church on Sunday. I hadn't a clue what to expect because I'd never been to any sort of a church like that. Went in and sat down the back. And this man got up and he spoke about, we're on the Ephesians series today, lads, and we're going to speak about spiritual warfare. And I was like, he spoke about sleep paralysis, how when you're in the middle of your sleep and like something can like cause paralysis to the bed. He spoke about like serpents. Everything that I've been through in that week, he'd spoke about, and he called it like the enemy, how the enemy gets in your mind and causes doubt, it causes fear, and it causes all this stuff. And I was like, this is so real. I was like, it was like, this is real.
So then you kind of bought in and went.
Then I was like, yeah, I've experienced all this week. And I went in on the Tuesday then to him. I said, listen, this is what has happened to me on the last week. I didn't understand any of it. I said, you just spoke about everything I've been through on the Sunday. I don't know what's going on in my life, but I don't want this. I want to be free, like.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how to describe what happened to me that Tuesday, right? It was like, do you know when you talk about demons that have haunted you maybe your whole life, or some experience you've had in life that no matter how much you try to fight through it, there's still always this noise saying, no, you're a piece of dirt. No, you don't deserve this. And that really controlled me. And it was one thing in particular that really controlled me, right? And I went in and...
That had happened.
Yeah. And we went in and they said, look, we're going to pray for you. And I said, okay. And I went into prayer. And next of all, I just went out of my body into this, like, I don't know how to describe it, but this demon, this man had just completely... had a grip of me and I couldn't get away from it. Yeah. And
like I was energetically, spiritually.
Yeah, I was trying to escape and I couldn't. And this for about 2.5 hours, this was what went on. And next of all, I don't even know how to explain it. And just so you know, right, when I went into like these meetings or I went into church and people spoke about, say, Jesus, I'd be like, oh, you go away with the Jesus crack. Like, listen, I believe in God. Don't talk to me about Jesus, right? Whatever it was in the name Jesus, I used to be so boiled up by. You couldn't mention it to me. I was like, away, weirdos, like.
But it just sounds like you had a spiritual awakening, like, or spiritual, like you'd hear many of the enlightened souls that have lived throughout time talk about moments of just where they went beyond their physical being. It sounds like what you've... And it's hard to describe those.
Yeah, but and I always said to someone as well, like, I'd say, like, listen, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about what you've experienced. If you've witnessed something, you know it's real. You and God know what's going on there. So it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. But next of all, I'm 2.5 hours in this battle. My shoulders nearly dislocating. I'm sweating. I had nearly passed out I don't know how many times. And next of all, like this wind just comes in and Jesus just appears to me, Tony. And I'm like, now you couldn't speak to me about this before. If you mentioned his name, I'd be like, go away, weirdo, right? Yeah. And I'm just like, and like, with the most gentleness and like soft and like just kindness and everything that I'd never really experienced, he said, why don't you pray for that man? And I remember turning around to that man, and I was only a little girl at the time, in this, whatever I'm in this vision. And I turned around and said, I'm going to pray for you. And next of all, this thing just disappears. This man disappears.
This man that...
Yeah, that controlled my whole life. And Jesus
Do you
says to
think
him,
that was underneath, that experience of that man was underneath a lot of the drug abuse?
100%.
And
Yeah. 100%. And then I turn around to him like to say, yeah, was that good? Like,
Yeah.
and he kind of says to me, no, I want you to tell him you actually love him. And I remember going, and I love you, like that. And I was only a little kid.
Was that hard to do?
No, like the hardest thing ever, like for me to even verbalize it, like was, but that's why I was in such pain. It was like this thing was pulling me back.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to describe it. It was like someone just plugged me into a socket, right?
Mm.
And this was like the first time I know I ever felt the Holy Spirit coming into my body, right? And it was like someone plugged me into a socket, and it was like I just felt this life come through me, and I was stuck to the couch, and they were like, "What's after going on? What is going on?" I couldn't speak. I was like, Jesus was there,
Yeah.
and I was like, I didn't understand what had happened.
Mm.
So I was like coming out of there going, this was really bizarre. Right, got into the car, went home. Don't know how I got home, but I remember the next day that I woke up and I was driving, and next of all, this man pulls out in front of me and nearly like completely cuts me off. Now, I still had a lot of anger in me at this stage, and I like, if someone had done that, I would have went over, pulled you out of the car window,
Before that night.
probably dragged you over, right?
Mm.
And next of all, I just remember thinking, that poor old devil must be in a rush somewhere. And kept driving on, right? And little things that whole week had happened to me that were so uncharacteristic of me.
Yeah.
I was really gentle and my heart was so soft towards things.
And has that stayed?
Yeah. So I was like...
Because I see how people are with you. And I always noticed about you, but just walking up the street there, it was like people are drawn to you. And I'm conscious of saying that because I think everyone needs a hero or a prophet. And sometimes that's what they chase, is that person has the answer, or that speaker on YouTube has the answer. And really the answers are inside us, but life exposes those answers to us, or gives us experiences that we discover those answers very
100%.
often. And some of the most painful experiences are actually exactly what we require, even though we wouldn't wish them, to discover
it's exactly
that
what's
deeper
needed,
piece.
yeah. But the way I look at it though, Tone, is like, we're the vessels. Do you know what I mean? I'm the vessel. So like, say I make a video, say like I'm in prayer or whatever, God gives me a message to make a video, and that's what I do usually. It's like, this is from God and this someone needs this message. I'll make the video, and then it's like, right, it goes out to whoever needs it. But I'm the link, but it's nothing to do with me. And that's why I do find it nearly very hard when people are like, oh, I love this or that. And I'm just like, but it's not me.
Well, the best writers say that they're actually just
they're just listening.
Conduit,
They're good listeners. And they're like, right,
in.
we're the vessel, and we're just passing on what you need to hear.
One of the reasons why I'm doing this, and I said I'd never do one because I had no reason to do it until I started thinking about young people. And I thought, there's hundreds and thousands of podcasts out there, but very rarely do young people get to listen to someone who they might follow on Instagram or they might watch their videos, but they don't really get to hear their story like we have yours.
Yeah.
So if you were looking at that 14, 15-year-old Mary who you said you hated your reflection, what would you say to them now, having gone on this absolutely incredible life journey you've gone on?
I give her a hug. That's the first thing I do, because I didn't know what love was. And I think the second thing would be that I was so, not obsessed, but I was so distracted in my own head by what other people taught me. It stopped me on my path for what I wanted to do. I would go to do something, I say, oh no, what are these people going to think of this? Like, when you get older, you look back and you realise, like, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks of you. What you think of yourself and what God thinks of you is all that matters.
Yeah.
So it'd be to not care what anybody else thinks of you. If you want to do it, do it.
Well, I think there's so many people that get so much from you, Mary, and I just hope that you just care for yourself as you go, because, you know, whether it's and the amazing thing about, we talked about doing this for 3 years. I always said, Mary, one day I'm going to do this thing and I want to interview you first. But on the same day that we do this for the first time, you launch your own brand of clothing. So where can people who are interested, maybe men like that and women who need it, or young people who need inspired, because we're all better off when we're inspired about our lives. We feel we're more powerful and we can do things that we want. Where can people find out more about you?
So my Instagram handle is Mary Hulgraine, or my TikTok I think is Molly Hull. Now there's so many fake pages, but go for a blue tick. And then my clothing brand is CLO.com, and everything will be available there. So it's like a faith-based clothing brand, but there's going to be like mental health, there's going to be recovery stuff, there's going to be stuff right through the clothing brand that I'm excited to build. So.
Well, you just keep doing what you're doing because we love it. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to hug every guest that comes on this, because I'm sure there'll be all different types of people. but I'm going to hug you.
Oh.
So well done. And thanks so much for coming on and for sharing so much of your great story. And yeah, I wish you all the best, Mom.
Thank you for having me. And I wish you all the best with this. You're going to inspire so many people.